Morning, everyone. Morning. And welcome to Level Up 2019. Way better than I expected. Excellent work. It's awesome to see so many of you here. We're nearly filled out the Marshall Auditorium this morning. But why are we all here? Well, Level Up's aim is to inspire us all to engage in learning and personal development by bringing Redgaters together to learn, share and collaborate. And last year's conference went really well, our first attempt, and this year we're bigger and better. So let's see what we've got. So I'm looking for some mandatory participation here. So, yes, Gareth. Have we got the BI team in? Let's try it again. So, okay. I'm looking for some mandatory participation here. Have we got the BI team in? Yeah, yes, thank you very much. And we got Core Dev? Core Dev? Yay! That's good work. Foundry? Cool kids at the back. Awesome. Project delivery team? Are you good? Yeah. I'll let you off. Your person down. I think we might have the product division in. Have we got those guys? Product support team, I think, will come along. Yeah. Yes, good work. You're pulling your weight there, punching in with your weight. And other people that I've not mentioned, are you here? Yes. Yay! Thank you, Lucy. Good. Did want to include you. So we have. Well, there's lots of you here, and there's lots of people you probably don't know. So why not say hello to one Redgater that you've not met before? And when we go back to the office, Redgate will be a little bit more connected. So pick someone out in a break and scare them with the conversation. So we've got over 40 Redgaters speaking for you today. They've come here to share their skills, knowledge and ideas with you guys. And that's way more than we had last time. I think it was about 20 speakers. So an opportunity for lots of people to speak for the first time, which is brilliant. And that's not the only change we've made to Level Up this year. At 6 o'clock, we're going to start what Gareth Bragg likes to call Revel Up 2019. You wanted that? So last year was awesome, and then at the end we sort of just went home, and we thought that wasn't right. We had a feel-good fun event in November at the Product and Foundry divisions, and they weren't quite connected, so we've mashed the two together, and we're going to do both today. So this time we want to get together to celebrate what we've achieved in the day and to reflect on what we've learnt and sort of have a drink and chill out together. So that's what will be happening at 6 o'clock. We'll have exclusive access to the airspace hangar for a few hours. There'll be food, there'll be drink, and there'll be a flight-themed film displayed under Concorde for you to watch. We're going to leave it a secret till the end of the day to find out what film it is, but just so you know, Matt, Jeff and I do take bribes. So we'll tell you more about it at the end of the day. That picture hasn't worked. Never mind, it's a nice picture next to that. As you probably also know, this year the conference has a theme, the future of product development. And as Simon mentioned in a company meeting, Redgate is flourishing, so we can look to the future with excitement and optimism. So what we're aiming for with the conference is a load of sessions filled with skills, techniques and ideas that we'll need to make the most of those opportunities that the growing company affords us. So we've broken the programme into 3 threads of content behind that theme, culture, build and customers. And Matt, Jeff and I are going to tell you a little story about each one of those things. And I'm going to start with culture. So these 2 very serious-looking gentlemen are brothers from Dayton, Ohio, and in 1896 they had a crazy idea. What if we could be the first ones to create a powered flying machine? Yes, this is Orville and Wilbur Wright. And I think Orville has the magnificent face furniture. And there was absolutely no reason why you might think they'd be successful. Because basically, they made bicycles. Yep, they owned a bicycle repair shop. They had no formal education in engineering. They had no actual experience with aviation whatsoever. And they had no financial backing, only their sort of modest profits from their small businesses. What they did have was a keen interest in the fundamentals of flight, in nature and with other aviation pioneers at the time. They had mechanical skills developed by working with bikes and machinery. And they had a belief, inspired by their work with bikes, that an unstable vehicle like a flying machine could be controlled and balanced with practice by a pilot. Whereas other aviation innovators at the time sort of felt that it was uncontrollable in aircraft and you had to force the aircraft to be stable, or they felt that the engine was the most important thing, so they spent years of investment into creating the best engine, whereas these guys felt the pilot was the centre of the problem. They also had an experimental approach. So from their experience with the bike shop, they felt the best way to create the right design was to actually ride. That allowed them to feel where the problems were, to make tweaks and improvements, and then to build on that experience. So, in 1899, they built their first practical flying machine. It was a kite, and it had a 5-foot wingspan, and they used to test their notions of aircraft control, focusing on something they called wing warping, which you don't need to know about right now. What they learned from these tests gave them confidence to build their first glider, and they did that. In 1900, they had their first glider. It was designed to carry a human, and they went off to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, to test it. They went to Kitty Hawk for 2 reasons. One, because it had consistent, constant wind, and the second, because it didn't have very much to crash into. They found their kite created less lift than they expected, so they didn't put a human on it. They flew it as a kite. I found a nice quote while I was researching about this, and it said, "Most of the kite tests were unpiloted, with sandbags and chains, or even a local boy acting as ballast." So hopefully the boy wasn't on that one, but so some of the tests failed, but they learnt. And so through those setbacks, they gathered information and they built the confidence to create the next version. So this was Mark II, their glider. This was better. It had an increased wingspan. And they got a human on board more consistently this time. But again, it didn't perform exactly as they hoped. This is it soaring high in the air. I think this is a landing after a very short flight. They then went away and built their own wind tunnel back in their workshop and collected more accurate data about efficient wings and propeller design, and they worked out exactly the amount of power they would need from an engine when they were to build it for powered sort of continuous flight. And then they took all the information and they put it into their next version of the glider. So Mark III had longer, thinner wings, and it was the first design with the rudder at the back, which you can't see very well in that picture. How did that fly? Pretty well. So this is Wilbur, high above the sand dunes, in North Carolina in 1902. They did hundreds of well-controlled glides, and it convinced them they were ready to build the real thing. So they went back to their workshop, and they realised they needed an engine. So whereas other innovators at the time had spent years developing an engine, these guys built one in 6 weeks themselves, because they knew how much weight they had to play with and how much power they needed. And through those constraints, they could build the right engine. So 6 weeks of tinkering, and they were confident they could reach their goal of powered manned flight. So when the time came for the first flight, they tossed the coin to decide which of the two would have the honour of that first journey, and Wilbur won. So on December the 14th, 1903, the Wright brothers launched their aircraft for the first time, and 3 seconds later it crashed, and they snapped the front. So they fixed it again, and 3 days later, on December the 17th, 1903, this happened. So this is Orville successfully taking off on the first sustained powered and controlled flight, and then landed safely 12 seconds or 37 metres later. So later in that day, they managed to sustain a flight of 59 seconds, but basically they had started the era of human flight. And on the other side of this hangar, over there, you can see next to a print of this from the original glass pane, you can see a scale model of the Wright Flyer, and more excitingly, you can see a section of fabric from the lower right wing of that aircraft. And then through that gallery, you can sort of see how the aviation has progressed from those early beginnings with the innovation from the Wright brothers. So I recommend going and having a look at that at the end of the day, because it really is great. So why am I talking about this? Well, how did the Wright brothers do it? So firstly, they had a clear goal. They wanted to be the first to create powered flying machines. They had a belief about how they felt they could do it, so they believed the pilot was the centre of the problem, and they had the deliberate experimental approach. And that kind of feels familiar to us. So you might have seen Jeff, Matt and I talk over a slide with these words on it before. So we believe the best way to make software is by engaging teams empowered with clear purpose, freedom to act, and a drive to learn. And it's that drive to learn that I want to sort of call out a little bit here. So we think to succeed in the coming years, with the opportunities a growing company affords us, we're going to need to get really good at learning. We're going to have to embed a learning culture. So we won't be sure exactly what to do in the face of many of these new challenges. We need to take our best shot, learn from what we see, and improve. And that's through our personal development, through the work that we do with our products, through how we structure the division, all of those things we need to learn. And we can't just affect a company's culture, unfortunately, by putting a cool slide up in front of people. You shape a culture by doing. So you shape a culture by 100 little actions, 100 little decisions, some techniques behind that ideal. And then when you look up away from your screen a few years down the line, you realise that actually your culture has changed and you have embedded that. So in a way, Level Up itself is an example of one of those ideas. We've all taken a step away from our desks for a whole day, and we're going to invest in learning and development so that we can do things better tomorrow than we did yesterday. And these folks, these awesome Red Gators, and me, are going to talk to you today on the theme of culture, from subjects from the learning through the use of data to imposter syndrome. They're going to talk to you about how we'll adapt our thinking in the world of containerization to how we can improve how we organise work and get things done. So if we embrace some of the lessons from these guys, maybe when we look up at Level Up 2020, we'll realise that we've changed our culture a bit.
Thank you, Chris. Right, so on to our next theme. Our next theme is about build, which is obviously core to everything we do at Redgate. We build software. And as we grow, we've got different challenges. We're going to have to build our software to work for larger customers with different requirements. We're going to have to start to share the capabilities across our products to build a more coherent solution. And we're going to have to do all of this while we continue to innovate. So like Chris, I'm going to start with a story. So, can anyone tell me what this plane is called? It's a nice, easy question for 10 o'clock in the morning. It is a Boeing 737. And now you've probably got two questions. First one, why has Jeff chosen the 737, given that it's been in the news for all the wrong reasons? And secondly, why does it begin with the number 7? I'm going to choose to focus on the latter point. So, during the Second World War, Boeing was primarily a military manufacturer, and after the war ended, they pursued a diversification strategy, which meant they need to go through a reorganisation. And to inspire and motivate their staff, they organised each department into numbers. If you were the missile department, you had the number 5, so anything you built started with 5. Similarly, engines were 6, and commercial planes were 7. And that tradition has continued to this day. That's why all planes begin with a 7. So let's look at the birth of the very first 737. So this was quite a radically new design at the time. It was much shorter and stubbier than previous generations of planes. And this was because it was optimized for those short-haul flights with a rapid turnaround. And this earned it the nickname the Baby Boeing. Now, one of the really clever things the engineers did when they started to build this plane was they began to reuse as many parts, as many components as they could from previous generations of planes. So something like 60% of the parts were the same. This not only meant reuse, but it meant that the people who were putting the plane together, they could reuse the same skills. The pilots could reuse the same skills because the cockpits were similar. And similarly, the people doing the safety certification knew what the widgets were. They had well-defined behaviours. But despite using 60% of the same parts as previous generations, this still took a really long time to get this plane delivered. The Baby Boeing lived up to its name, and it took 9 months from start to finish. So if we fast forward to the modern day now, we can see how much investment Boeing have put into their platform to satisfy higher demand. So a modern Boeing plane is vastly more complicated than the one from the 60s. So there's about 367,000 different widgets that go into a plane. These come from over 1,000 suppliers. Just in wiring alone, there's 50 kilometers of wiring that needs to be put into place. And this needs to be put together, tested, and delivered quickly because demand is incredibly high for these kind of aircraft. What you can't really get a sense of from this is that this is actually a moving conveyor belt. So the way the Boeing is manufactured is a train drops off the fuselage at one end of the factory. As it moves along on this giant conveyor belt, the wings are attached, the landing gears are attached, the seats are attached, the wiring is done. Every single one of those 3,670,000 bits is put into the plane. It moves along at a speed of about 5 centimeters a minute. And by the time it reaches the other end of the factory, all it needs is a lick of paint, and then it's just off a test flight and it's delivered. This investment in their infrastructure has allowed them to cut the time for delivery down from 9 months to just 9 days, which I find completely amazing. But not only is the 737 rapid to produce with all these shared components and all this investment in their platform, it's also easy to adapt. So from freight haulage to military to transatlantic jets to even being able to take off on gravel, there is a 737 available that suits every taste, and they are all built from this same platform. So it's Boeing's investment in this adaptable infrastructure that's really made this the most successful plane in the world. Over 10,000 of these original 737s have been delivered. And if you look up right now, there are 1,000 in the sky. Well, obviously not above here, but you know what I mean, around the world. And by the time I've done this short speech, about 2 of them have taken off and landed at destinations all over the world. So why am I saying all this? Well, I'm saying all this because this is the core of what we do. We're only going to succeed if we reliably solve our customers' problems with ingeniously simple software. And as we move into the future, we're going to succeed by sharing components, investing in infrastructure, and making our code as easy to adapt as a 737. That doesn't quite sound right, but you know what I mean. Okay, so that's why we've got the build track, and we have got this amazing set of talks by these fine people here. You will hear talks on everything from containers to microservices to Oracle, from rewrite to refactoring to keeping your options open. There's a great selection of talks for everyone, and I hope to see as many of you there as possible. Thank you.
Cool. So in the same spirit as Jeff and Chris, I'm going to talk to you a bit about customers by telling you a story. So this is the Airbus A380 Super Jumbo. It's the world's largest commercial aircraft. It was hailed by many as the future of modern travel for its ability to ship large numbers of passengers around some of the world's largest airport hubs. This plane has been in production for 12 years and has cost about $25 billion to develop. It was described by many as the hotel in the sky. Just for a sense of scale, these planes are absolutely huge. So it would accommodate the population of a small Cambridgeshire village like Fen Drayton, or about 4 times the number of people in the last Redgate birthday photo. They're massive. Passengers loved these services as well. They were great. They were the height of luxury. So as a passenger, there's nothing to dislike. They included premium facilities like these fully stocked lounge bars, ample spacious seating, so with over 500 square meters of floor space, whether you're traveling in economy, business or first class, you literally can kick back, relax and enjoy the flight. They even had these insane private lounges that consisted of 3 rooms. You had a bedroom, a lounge space, and beyond those doors there was your own private bathroom with a shower cubicle. Mental, eh? And I'll leave you to think about what happens in heavy turbulence, because I've no idea how you have a shower when that happens. But as amazing as they were, and as great as they were for the passengers, in February of this year, production of these ceased. So the last one went into production, and despite early interest from big names like Emirates, they didn't make the profits they needed to keep this plane in production. So why, despite all the interest from the passengers, were they so doomed to failure? So what happened is they got it right for the end user, but wrong for the buyer. And chiefly, the airlines saw these as inefficient and expensive. They were hugely expensive to run. So fuel costs alone for these things were about $29,000 to fuel one of them for an hour. For comparison, I can run my Vauxhall Astra for about 14 years on that. I worked that out as well. So again, although they were massive, they had tons of seats, but the problem there is they had to put bums on seats. So to bring their operational costs down, they had to make sure every flight was filled to capacity. But many flights weren't quite like that, but they didn't fill the seats every single time. So again, this meant huge inefficiencies for some of the airlines. And in terms of trying to get people on these planes, you thought trying to board a Ryanair flight was bad. Trying to get 800 people through airport boarding gates. They just weren't designed to accommodate the sheer numbers of people that were trying to move and board these planes. So what kind of went wrong if we do a bit more diagnosis? Despite the efforts of Airbus, they ended up focusing on the wrong set of problems. So whilst Airbus were trying to tackle the needs associated with shipping these huge quantities of people on single flights between some of the major airport hubs around the world, you then had services like Boeing coming along with these cheaper, more efficient, nimbler flights. And what they were trying to do is actually tackle a different set of needs or a different problem. They were just trying to get people in a more efficient way between some of the airports, but they were bypassing these major hubs altogether. So whilst they're still trying to tackle the problem of getting people, large numbers of people, across to these different locations, they really were focusing on bringing down the costs and improving the efficiencies for the airlines. And those are the needs that resonated with their customers ultimately. And that's why services and airlines were adopting some of the planes like the Boeing Dreamliner, because they focused on the right set of needs. So why am I telling this story and why is it important for us? So we've done an amazing job of engaging with end users. So when we're thinking about point tools and how we sell to individual users and small businesses, that's fine. We engage with the end user regularly. We understand their needs. But what we need to do as we move to designing solutions for larger customers is we need to understand the needs of the end user and the buyer. And that needs to be our shift in focus. So we need to understand their goals. We need to understand what they're trying to achieve as an organization. And to do this would mean not only do we land big fish, but we can help them reliably succeed with our solutions. And that's what's going to be really important for us moving forwards. So we had some great sessions lined up today on the theme of customers from folks across product, marketing, and sales. So I'm really pleased to say it's not just products that are here today giving us talks, sharing what they're learning. We've got folks from marketing and sales here as well, so it's great. And you'll hear everything from the likes of Neil on how to keep research insights alive for longer, to Sam on the evolution of the sales process. And I'd highly recommend you check out some of these great talks today. But before we hand over, there's a few logistics for me to cover off just to help guide you through the day. So firstly, and pretty much straight after this, we've got talks at 10:30 here in Marshall, in Inman, Air Suite and Comet. Lunch will be served at 12:30 in Concord. We'll be back in here at 16:45 and we'll just do a quick debrief for the end of the day. At 1700 there is about an hour for you to walk around the museum, so if you haven't had a chance already over lunch, I'd highly recommend you spend a bit of time checking out some of the exhibits. And finally, as Chris mentioned earlier, at 1800, sorry, we'll be enjoying the Revel Up social events for the evening. And as every good conference does, we'll be encouraging you all to share and tweet about some of the great things that you're learning today. So we are running a tweet of the day competition using the Level Up 2019 hashtag. And yeah, we'd highly encourage you all to share some of the great things that you're learning today. The best tweet wins a good prize. A good prize. A good prize. So from two pioneers of manned flight to two pioneers of time travel, we just wanted to kind of wrap things up for the morning and just leave you with a couple of messages just to think about over the course of the day. So firstly, please be kind to the speakers and each other. They've done a ton of work to prepare for today. We hope that you'll conduct yourselves well. Attend the sessions, obviously, be engaged, be active, but make sure you respect the time and effort they put in, please. And have fun in the process. So the principal reason we're here today is to share and learn, as Chris described, but we really want you to have fun in the process as well. So this is a huge effort to get everyone out of the building. Please do enjoy it, but please be respectful. And you probably heard enough from certainly me, but also Chris and Jeff. So to move things on, as I say, sessions will start promptly, literally in about 3 minutes' time. But you're going to hear from some great folks today, and just to set the stage for what's coming next, you'll hear from Joel, who's going to talk about being data-driven and what that means, hopefully debunking some of the myths and misconceptions of what it means to be. Yes, Ali.
And the room's back to front.
Yeah. Is the slide bags or is the phone line?
Possibly. You figure it out.
It was all going so well.
It was. Anyway, we'll figure that out in a minute. It's fine. Joel, thank you, Chris. Joel will be giving a talk. There he is. Thank you. Joel on data. Awesome, in here. You'll then also hear from Andy, James, and Chris on how they successfully ran an EAP program, bringing people in. Thank you. Bringing people in through marketing activities and also running that program. So if you want to learn about how to run an EAP, please check that out. You'll hear from Marie France and Damon. Unfortunately, Kiara's not here today, who are going to be doing a workshop on the business flexibility program.
England, which is just the next one, right?
Thank you, Chris. And finally, last but not least, Tim and Reagan, who are somehow going to do an interactive origami-based workshop on some of the product division's recommended reading lists. So just out of pure curiosity, I'd go along to that. So you haven't got enough time to grab a coffee, unfortunately. So for folks who want to stay and see Joel, please stay here. For everyone else, follow Chris's instructions. And on behalf of the PDLT, please have an awesome day. Thank you very much.